Back at Rebel headquarters. All right, let's talk to Darnell Jones. He's running in Texas's 2nd district, and Texas has elections coming up. In fact, you can start voting right now, and the day of the election is March 6th, but you could send in ballots earlier than that. Darnell's a Justice Democrat, so he's uncorrupted and does not take corporate PAC money. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
I am well, and thank you. Great to be here.
No problem. So you've got a lot of different opinions that I find interesting and I like. So I want to get to criminal justice reform in a second because it's bold. But before we do that, I want to get your sense of the internal dynamics of the Democratic Party, because before you get to take on Republicans, you of course have to go through a primary where you've got a lot of different Democrats. What is your sense of how the Democratic Party is picking their favored candidates in those primaries?
Well, you can't really blame any particular person or even the party as a whole, because there are a whole lot of people who are Democrats and have nothing to do with those processes. However, it is unfair sometimes that where you can actually tell where you have candidates that seem to be pushed more by the party than others when we're all Democrats and we all have voting records that show that we're Democrats. So I just believe that is a part of the process that you don't get to learn until you're a candidate. It's one of those very frustrating things that you have to endure, because it kind of lets you know why things are the way they are, whether they're within the party or outside the party. But I believe that we can all come together as Democrats, but we have to be transparent and we have to be truthful in those terms.
And what is the one metric you think the Democratic Party cares most about in backing a candidate?
Well, definitely money. I have not been. I've been very outright with regard to what I say about money and how money seems to influence our party, and it seems like a lot of our leadership is trying to push that upon the voters. Money does not determine your viability. If that were the case, I wouldn't be sitting here as a candidate today who is a viable candidate in this race. I know that I have not raised as much as some of my opponents, and that wasn't my plan. My plan was to get out and reach the voters. I believe that at the end of the day, money does not press a cast ballot button. It is going to be the people. And if you talk to people, it doesn't matter how much money you have. If people can see through your interests, in other words, and if your interests are not their interests, they won't vote for you anyway.
Yeah, and the thing that's not talked about enough, and I've seen it even more so since doing Rebel headquarters, since talking to all the Just Democratic candidates, et cetera, is that, and I'm not sure I even appreciate it enough. I knew that sickness existed in the Democratic Party, but what's really connected for me is how it aids and abets corruption, because it says, okay, if money is your number one and perhaps only metric for what kind of Democratic candidates you'll support, that means you'll get the ones who raise the most money. Most of the time, the people who raise the most money do it from corporations, large donors, et cetera. So then how in the world would those candidates then turn around and end the corrupt system in the first place if they benefited from it? So the Democratic Party has unfortunately set up the circular system, but you guys are doing excellent work trying to break that system and actually reach the voters. So let's talk about your progressive ideas. So what do you think is the right kind of reform for the criminal justice system?
Well, first, we've got to stop allowing people who are so wealthy go in there, because we have a lot of wealthy people who serve in Congress who have an interest in making sure these prisons are filled. So in other words, what that does is it creates targets in our community, targets of meaning people of color most often, or people in lower socioeconomic standing. So with that being said, there's a reason for cronyism. There's a reason for folks to make those decisions to not remove mandatory minimum sentencing guidelines, because they help keep prisons full. I believe that as a party, we've got to fight really strongly to get rid of mandatory minimum sentencing guidelines if we are to be the party of the people. My campaign slogan is that I want to put people over politics, and the way that I plan to do that is make sure that in every consideration, I consider the people who are voting and the people who live in this country, the citizens of this country first. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get together with my Democratic colleagues to help get rid of mandatory minimum sentencing guidelines.
Yeah, well, that would go a huge way towards it. We should have done it a long time ago, but there are these issues that Democrats run away from because of what names the Republicans will call them. It's good to see strong progressives who are actually fighting for the right positions. And so also on immigration reform, you call for a rapid pathway to citizenship.
That's right.
Again, not something that I see often. A lot of times the Democrats are apologetic about it. Well, please, if you give us this, we'll give you that. And it'll take 14 years or 12 years if we're lucky, et cetera. So what do you mean by a rapid pathway?
Well, first, I want to let you know where I'm coming from with this. I served as the Assistant Equal Opportunity Director for the Navy. And in that, I saw a lot of immigrants serving in our military. And to think that those immigrants who are serving in the same uniform that I'm serving in, whose lives are on the line every single day, are not citizens, that was just beyond my biggest thoughts. I'm like, why, how could this be so, in other words? So what I say is if they are here, then we need to allow, if anyone wants to be an American and would definitely be willing to fight for their lives for America, they should be citizens. And the day they sign to be in our military, especially the day that they end their service, they should become citizens. There should be no doubts about that.
Yeah, I want to ask about your service in a second. How about non-service members?
Even non-service members, there are ways, community service, anytime you are effectively enhancing the American dream and the American perspective, just by being here and lending credibility to our country, you're helping to build roads, you're helping to build bridges, you're helping to build America. All of those things help you show your pride in America. And I think that for that reason, we need a rapid pathway to citizenship. Everyone comes here in search of the American dream, and we shouldn't deny that.
Yeah, indentured servitude only lasted 7 years. And that was considered brutal. And instead, now we have a lot of immigrants taking money that is way less than what we pay people here. And now we're saying, well, do that for 12 years or 14 years, and then we'll think about it. And that is also a brutal system. Okay, now I'm going to ask you a funny question about your service. You were in the U.S. Army and Navy for 25 years.
That's correct.
I didn't know, and this goes to my ignorance, and I like to learn from interviews. I didn't know you could be in the Army and the Navy. How does that work?
Well, not simultaneously. I was actually in the Army my first 6 years, and then I served in the Navy my last 19 years. So that's how I was in the Army. I was in the Army as a laboratory technician for my first 6 years, and then I served in the Navy as a surface warfare officer for the last 19 years. And I was fortunate enough to go to law school while I was in the Navy.
So how do you make the switch over? Do you have to go through training again?
Yes, you have to. Well, you get your degree. So I got my degree while I was in the Army. And then I got commissioned in the Navy. So you have the enlisted ranks and you have the officer rank. So initially I was an enlisted member, and then I became an officer after the completion of college.
I got you. Are the Army guys still pissed at you for switching over to the Navy?
No, actually, I know quite a few who did the same thing. And they're still all my brothers in military service. We all fight together. We all were in it to protect this country. And that's not to protect a Republican nor a Democrat. That is protect Americans. So that is why I'm in this race. And I'm in this race because I want to protect Americans. I want to fight for Americans. I want to advocate for them. We have enough allies in Congress already, but we don't have enough advocates. And that's the difference between me and I believe other candidates.
Yeah, so last question is about education, because you mentioned there all the different schools you went to, and you wound up getting a doctorate in law at John Marshall Law School, et cetera. So what's your plan for public education, both at the high school and college level?
Oh my gosh, for high schools, I don't believe in voucher programs, first of all. I believe that vouchers only allow us or cause our public education system to be even more divided and segregated as it is. I believe in fully funded higher education in both public universities and trade schools. And the reason I say that is because a lot of people don't want to go to college, but they still need to be able to get a job that pays a living wage. And that is only going to be allowable if they are able to get some type of trade under their belt.
All right, sounds like you're a believer in equality of opportunity.
Absolutely.
What a radical position. All right, so let me show you the links to help Darnell Jones run for Congress. Wouldn't it be amazing if we had all these uncorrupted progressives in Congress from Texas? So jdarnellforcongress.com, and then you've got the donation and the volunteer links. Look, I tell you every time that the links are down below. They're really easy. If you're watching on YouTube later, and they're in the description box, and then on Facebook, they're in the comment section. But while we're doing the interview at any time, if you like what someone's saying, you can go down and click those links and donate or volunteer. So Darnell Jones, thank you for joining us at Rebel headquarters, and good luck in the primary, which is happening right now.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And by the way, we will very likely be doing primary nights for elections like Texas. So make sure whenever there's a big election in your state, check out tyrtnetwork.com/live, and then we'll get to see if these progressives start winning in primaries. That's going to be exciting.